What's up, everybody? In today's video, I'm going to be giving you a defender tier list for Year 8 Season 1 Operation Commanding Force. First of all, I just want to go over the tiers and what they mean. Meta is pick this every single round and you will win. Good is operators that are always going to be good no matter when you bring them. Situational are operators that are really, really good, but only in certain situations. Okay operators are just operators that are okay. Bad operators are operators that are bad, and these operators need to be reworked because they are that fucking dog shit. So with that out of the way, let's get straight into the video. First of all, Doc. Doc is okay. Not a terrible operator. Healing, sure, he's pretty much just fine. He's better on console because people don't hit heads as often. Like, it literally is statistically proven that people hit heads less on console than they do on PC. So people are body shotting you, you have more opportunity to heal. And if we're going over that, let's go ahead and go over Thunderbird and Rook too. Pretty much the exact same thing. If we're talking about ranked for PC, right, this is a ranked tier list, they're all pretty much the exact same. They're pretty much okay. If you're spawn peeking, Rook, sure, doesn't really matter. But these are all just okay operators. If you're on console, I'd put them in good, but if not, put them in okay. And then let's go into Frost. I think Frost is good, maybe even meta, maybe. I might get back onto that. For now, I'm gonna put her, I'll put her in meta. She's probably one of the best solo queue defenders for ranked because one, people are not looking for her traps, especially in the higher elos. So she's actually pretty good. In the lower elo, people aren't looking for her traps either. It's really on those mid to low elos where people are like severely looking for her traps because everyone's playing Frost. Besides her utility though, deployable shield, 1.5, gun with an extended barrel that has absolutely zero recoil, secondary shotgun for making rotates, head holes, whatever you might need. So she's very flexible, and I think that's really important for a solo queue operator. Let's get into Goyo. I think Goyo is good. One of the things that sucks about this meta is that it's a very fast-paced meta, right? And we need operators that are able to slow down that meta, or we need operators that are able to feed into it. So Smoke is a really good operator. He's just not really that good for this meta. Goyo is the same thing, right? He's good for the meta because he can slow things down, but he's not like too limiting where he only has an SMG-11 and a shotgun for solo queue, right? So he is actually kind of better. I see a lot of people playing Goyo right now. He's really good on certain sites like basement and bank, but you're not always going to get value out of him unless you're strictly playing off of his canisters. I do love the Vector with 1.5 though, so I'm going to put him in good form now. Thorn is just okay. I don't really think she's all that good. Her utility's ass. She does bring a deployable shield though, and her gun is okay, but that's pretty much it. I'm not a huge Thorn type of guy. There aren't really many situations where you could use her either, especially with Brava being in the game. She's just not very good, so I'm putting her in okay for now. Let's take a look at a situational operator though. Castle, great example of a situational operator. You can't bring him on every site, and most people are bad at Castle, which makes Castle a bad operator, but if you're good at Castle, he can be very, very powerful. And he can be good at extending the site and slowing down the rush. So I do think he's good in certain uses, right? That's why he's situational, but he's not too terrible of an operator. Mira as well, great example of a situational operator. She is amazing when you bring her, but there are certain sites, there are certain maps where you cannot bring her at all, right? Good example, you cannot bring her on hookah for coastline. You can't, because they are going to get shot immediately. You can, however, bring her on kitchen on coastline. It's very powerful for kitchen. So, you know, there's just certain uses. I'm not saying she's a bad operator, not saying she's worse than anybody above her, just saying she is situational, right? Let's go into some other operators. If we're talking about solo queue ranked, we're not talking about comp. This is purely for ranked, being that most of the players are silver and gold. Gotta put Kapkan in meta. Kapkan has the highest win rate and highest ban rate for console, and I think for PC that matter, in the entire game for last year. Now with Brava, that might change, but honestly, Brava is a bit underwhelming, and you can look at your Kapkan traps and see if they've been hacked or not. It's not really that powerful, so I would still consider a meta 1.5 with a gun that has no recoil and 31 bullets, and he has nitro cell. Overall, very good. If you have Kapkan traps and you're dead, you can still get kills. It's a very powerful concept, so definitely meta for me. Azami is one that I want to talk about. Azami is probably the most broken character in the entire game of Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Siege. I think that nobody is playing her to her fullest potential yet. If you can get Azami to her fullest potential and you play her every single round, you will win and you will get to the highest rank easily. I might even make like a zombie to champ guide series, maybe. Like, I don't know. She's probably the most broken character in the game, and I think people started using her in like the way she's meant to be used, they would nerf her immediately. It's absolutely ridiculous. I want to, however, talk about some bad operators. I think that Cav is terrible. Cav is a terrible operator in Rainbow Six Siege. I don't think it's ever going to change. If you're in low elo or if you're on console, easily. easily meta. But if you're not and you're good at the game, people drone people aren't roam clearing alone, her guns are terrible, so like she needs a rework. I don't know, like she brings some base value and that's literally just low ranks, so maybe not a rework, maybe they just need a buffer. So I'll put her in bad. She's not really necessarily need of a rework, but she's just not that good. Let's take a look at Valkyrie. Valkyrie's pretty good. The only thing I would say is people don't really watch your cameras that you put down when you're playing Valkyrie that often in ranked, so that's why she's not like super meta. Also, you can make nitro C4 traps, which would boost her up a little bit. She has a MPX which has, you know, 0 recoil that you can put an extended barrel on, so pretty good. It's just she can be a bit underwhelming at times if you're not using her cameras properly, especially in a solo queue environment where your teammates aren't using her cameras properly. She's not that good, but she definitely still is a great operator. I mean, it's Valkyrie, bro. It's 3 cameras, like it's always going to be good. Speaking of, I'm gonna put Mute in the same, maybe even meta, honestly. I think I'm gonna put Mute in meta. The reason I'm putting Mute in meta is because of Brava specifically, but also Mute is always just a great operator to have. Like baseline, bare minimum for a tier list, you have to have Mute and good. Just so much versatility, you can do so much with his utility, he has so much utility to bring. His weapon selection is outstanding, he has a nitro cell, so just that makes him in good. But then you talk about Brava, you talk about the meta, you talk about how people need to drone in order to do a rush heavy meta, and this denies droning. This denies Dokubi calls and Lion scans, which are 2 very meta operators right now, so I think Mute is actually a meta operator, and people need to start using him a lot, especially in ranked when people are rushing with Dokubi and Lion. So definitely recommend that you play Mute if you haven't already. I'm gonna put Mozzie in good. He's not meta, and I'll tell you why. He's just a worse version of Mute if you want to play Mute but you want to frag out. That's what Mozzie's made for. He does counter Brava, which is cool, but he doesn't counter Dokubi or Lion like Mute does. He doesn't counter a lot of other operators. He's a bit underwhelming in his utility, but his weapons are pretty good. It just depends on what you want to play, right? You want to play more fraggish, play Mozzie. You want to play more support, play Mute. They're pretty much the same thing, but they just have different uses, so that's why I'm putting Mozzie in good. Pulse, I'm going to put in situational. There are certain maps where he is an outstanding operator, Consulate being the #1 example. There are certain maps where he's almost unplayable. I would say like Theme Park, where there's not a lot of vertical play already. He's not that good of an operator. You can roam with him for Theme Park, to be completely fair, and you can always have information with him, but he's not going to be outstanding like he is on Consulate on a lot of other maps. Border especially too, because it's very easy to roam clear on Border due to how small Border is. Pulse is not a great operator because of that, so Pulse kind of situational, depends on how you play him, depends on where you play him, depends on your play style, so I'm just gonna put him in situational for now. Alibi, always going to be good bare minimum, but there could be an argument made for meta. The only reason I'm not putting her meta is because she lost the 1.5, which is why most people played her, right? She has a great gun with a 1.5 times scope. Now she doesn't, and now everybody's trying to run suppressor and extended barrel on her, and now her recoil is uncontrollable, right? But again, deployable shield, Bailiff, somewhat okay utility, so she brings everything that Frost does, just a little bit worse. I don't think that she's as meta as somebody like Azami or Capcan, so I don't think it's fair to put her in meta. I'm just gonna put her at the very top of good for now. And then what else do I want to do? Let's put Smoke in good. Normally I would always put Smoke in S tier, but I think because of how rush heavy the game is becoming and how, like, I almost want to say quick match and TDM-y it's getting, like people are just running around shooting people. That's the meta of Siege right now. That's just how you rank up, right? Take it from a champ player. Smoke, not that useful because people are just running in. It's not getting to where people are planting. It's not getting to the last 30 seconds, right? So people aren't needing Smoke as much. Goyo is just kind of a cooler alternative for solo queue, right? So he's not a terrible operator. He's probably the best anchor in the entire game, to be completely honest. But again, you don't really want to be anchoring, you're going to be roaming, right? It's kind of just that meta, so I don't want to put him in meta. He's not meta, but he's still a great operator nonetheless. So let's take a look at his worst counterpart, which is Tachanka. A lot of people think Tachanka is bad, think Tachanka is okay. Tachanka is situational, and I'll tell you why. There are certain points where you can bring out a Tachanka with a Smoke and a Goyo and completely lock down the site. The only situation that I can think of is Basement Bank. People play Smoke, Goyo, and Tachanka, all 3, for doing strategies to completely lock down CC and make sure that nobody plants. Now, I will say that is more comp oriented, and you don't see a lot of that in ranked. So if I'm doing a solo queue ranked tier list, he probably isn't situational, and I probably want to bump him down to okay. I can't even say that Doc, Rook, and Thunderbird are on the same level as Thorn and Tachanka though. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna bump Cav down to rework. I'm gonna bump these 3 down to bad. That seems more fair to me. Cool. Now that I have that out of the way, let's talk about Solus. Solus, I think, is meta. You could say good, but I think she's meta. The reason being is because, no, I'll put her in good. I'll put her in good. So Solus, like, is good for this meta, but that doesn't mean that she's a meta operator. Like, Oryx is another great example of somebody that's good for this meta, but not necessarily a meta operator, right? So Oryx by far has the most useless utility on defense. Like, he does not bring fuck all utility, but he has the highest win percentage of any defender on PC. The highest, and that's because he has a 1.5 and he has utility good for taking gunfights, which inherently is meta, right? But I don't feel like I'd be doing justice to these operators by putting Oryx in the same category. I don't know, let me know what y'all think in the comments, because he doesn't bring utility, but if we're talking about solo queue ranked, he has the highest win rate for a reason, right? So like, I don't know, I'm conflicted. I think what I'll do is I will put him in good. Put him in good, because if we're talking about solo queue ranked, he's good, right? Because you can kind of just do what you want with him. But if we're talking about an actual operator and how much utility you're bringing, he's okay. I'm even inclined to put him in bad, but he has a 1.5 and a low recoil SMG, so I think okay is where I'll put him. Let's talk about Melusi. Melusi is good, probably the bottom of good though, because it's just not her meta. She does slow down the attacker rush, which is cool. She is a 3 armor, so she can play off of her Melusi Banshees more, which is cool, but Brava, right? So like, that's kind of the only thing that's stopping me from putting her any higher. She's still a great operator though, and you know, that doesn't really need to be talked about much more than that. Warden, I'm gonna put situational. You need to know when to play a Warden. He has a 1.5 with a MPX, which is outstanding. Macro shot or deployable shield completely counters any smokes or flashes in the entire game. Being as it that Ying is actually pretty good right now, I want to put him in situational. He's not a terrible operator, right? People on console might disagree, but I'm a PC champ, so shut your fucking mouth. But no, Warden definitely situational for me. Let's talk about something that's going to be very controversial though. I'm going to put Bandit and Cade in situational. I put Bandit higher because he counters EMPs much more effectively than any other denial operator in the entire game, but that is only in situations where they would need to keep a wall closed because of EMPs, right? So technically, by textbook definition, he is situational. Same thing with Cade. With Mute, you can bring every single round to get a lot of value out of him. With Bandit, not so much, because there's certain sites where you don't need a wall closed, and if you are playing Bandit, you're not Bandit tricking, then he's not very good. So he's only good in certain situations if you are playing those certain situations. So I'm going to put them in situational. Again, like, it's such a weird meta that we're in right now, right? Because people aren't grenading as much, they're not using utility as much, they're not opening walls as much, to be completely honest. So having Cade and Bandit here is kind of fair. And honestly, having Wamai in here is fair too, because you can always bring a Wamai, he'll always bring value, but not everybody is bringing nades. Nobody's smoke planning, nobody's playing Capitao. So I don't really feel inclined to put him that high up there. If you play these operators, you're gonna get more value than if you play a Wamai, right? Like, we can all agree on that much. But there's certain situations where, you know, if they're nading a lot, if they're rushing a lot with Ying, if they're playing Capitao a lot, if you're on Clubhouse in general because people need more utility on that map, then sure, you know, Wamai can definitely be played. I don't know, I might even put him in good. I think I'm just gonna put him in situational. Controversial pick, I know, but I'll put him in situational. Jaeger, I feel inclined to put in situational too, but I'll put him in good just because he can always bring more inherent value than Wamai can, because he's a lot easier to get value out of, being as it that as Wamai, you get more value staying alive, but rounds are over in the first minute and a half more than they are not, right? So Jaeger is always going to be better because you can get his utility most effectively in the first minute and a half of the round. So Jaeger, I'm definitely going to put in good. Next, we can talk about Echo. Echo's a bit of a weird pick. He's either okay or in situational for me. Like, there are certain maps where Echo's amazing, like Bank or like Cafe. Those are two great Echo maps, but you're not always going to need an Echo, and Echo's not really suited for this meta. I will say they did buff his shotgun and he has a deployable shield, which is cool, but that is about it, really. Like, that's really about it. So I'll stick him in situational because there's certain maps where he's cool, but even then, when you're solo queuing, Echo's not at his full potential, because Echo at his full potential is you have cameras and your teammates swing off of your cameras. That is Echo, right? If you don't have teammates, and we're talking about solo queue ranked, I want to put him in okay. I'm going to do the same thing to Maestro. Honestly, I'm going to put Maestro in bad. Here's why. Brava completely counters Maestro. EMP grenades completely counter Maestro. Gaunt 6 and frag grenades completely counter Maestro. Thatcher completely counters Maestro. There's way too many operators that are way too meta, that are way too good, way too much utility that counter Maestro right now. The fact that Brava can take over a Maestro cam and completely destroy every single other piece of defender utility within the range of that Maestro cam is absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. So they need to rework him. If they made it to where, like, they couldn't just as easily knife his evil eyes, or they couldn't hack it as easily somehow, I think he would then be a good operator again, but he's just not. His LMG is good. He has a bailiff, that's awesome. He has impacts, that's okay. but he's just not good right now. He's not at all good right now. Ella, I think, is good. Nah, I don't know. I think Ella's okay. Her weapons are very hard to use. If they made her SMG like 0 recoil, she'd be meta, I think, because she's so fast-paced and she plays into that kind of fraggish heavy meta, and because her stuns are absolutely insane. Her shotgun is also very good for playing behind her shield, but you can only do that in certain scenarios, right, which would make her situational. But I think she isn't situational because you can play her and get some value out of her every single round, every single site. It's just not that much, which is why she's going in okay. So I'll put Ella in okay for now. I know that's a bit of a weird pick, but bear with me. Lesion, I'm gonna put in good. Legion's always good. He slows down the attacker rush, very beginner friendly. Not much I can really say. He does kind of counter the entire meta that's coming right now, which is just fast paced, and he brings intel. The only thing is, if it's fast paced meta, the longer you have to stay alive as Legion. That means the more utility you get out of him, and people aren't staying alive as long. So I could see why he could be placed lower, but I think he is better, especially for newer players, so I'm gonna put him in good. Down to our last 3 defenders. Just rework Clash, please. I don't need to even say anything. A Rooney. So most tier list put her in meta because she's actually a very good operator. But talking about solo queue ranked, people are using EMP grenades, people are using Brava, people are using Yana a lot, which completely counters her, people are using flash grenades. I think I'm going to put her at the top of good. Her DMR is great, her P10 running is great. The fact that she can make infinite sight setup is also amazing. There's too many things that counter her, you know what I mean? It's like the same case as Maestro. There's too much that counter her, but she's still an outstanding op. So I don't know. I feel like she's still great for the meta. Nah, you look at anybody playing ranked, look at her pick rate and look at her win rate. It's terrible. So gonna put her in good for now. Sorry. Vigil, I think Vigil is okay. Mozzie is just a better version of Vigil. Alibi is a better version of Vigil. Solus is a better version of Vigil. So is Legion. So is Valkyrie, right? There's just better versions of Vigil. So no reason to really play them. And that is pretty much it. There's nothing that I missed, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, no, that's pretty much it. This is a very weird meta, so you're gonna have very weird tier lists. If you look at any other content creators tier list, they're gonna be very weird. Like Braxton, great example. Weird ass tier list, but you listen to why he says everything that he says, it's for a good reason, right? Garfield, really weird tier list, but you listen to what he says and it makes sense, right? Everyone's tier lists are going to look different because it's a different meta and nobody really knows what to make of it until we're deep into the season. So a lot of this is subject to change, but I definitely think that I have most of what I have on here to be right. So I will have an attacker tier list, I think literally the day after this one. So be tuned for that. You get to see where Brava is on that tier list. And with that out of the way, that's pretty much the entire video. Like the video if you liked it. My name is Alec and I will see you all in the next video. Later.